Good evening, I'm John Batchelor. This is the John Batchelor Show. 4 Iranian small boats harassed a U.S. Navy warship near the Persian Gulf. No missiles were fired. This is the Chief of Naval Operations within these last hours. Admiral John Richardson said the incident involving the guided missile destroyer USS Nitsa reflects the greater competition the U.S. is facing at sea. This is a report from ABC News. He added it underscores the naval tensions with Tehran, which include other similar incidents, as well as the brief detention in January of 10 U.S. Navy sailors who mistakenly steered into Iranian waters. Malcolm Hoenlein, Conference of Presidents, major American Jewish organization, joins me. Good evening, Malcolm. And the harassing of U.S. Navy warships in the Persian Gulf. It continues the predatory nature of the rogue regime of Iran. We highlight this because it's a year plus since the Iran deal was made, and not only is there not improvement in the Iranian conduct, they're bolder, nastier, more aggressive, and more confident that they can intimidate the United States Navy.
Absolutely. I think that this incident, if we allow this again to go unresponded to, when the Nitsa, the destroyer, which is part of the USS Eisenhower's carrier strike group, and of course at the core of it, the USS Dwight Eisenhower, it's operating in the region, and we see these ships start playing, Iranian ships start playing havoc, crossing with a few hundred yards of our destroyer. There were 4 incidents altogether, 4 different incidents. This one took place near the Straits of Hormuz, and the Nitsa was operating with the guided missile destroyer, the USS Mason, for those who cover these things and really follow it more carefully. And they were exiting the Persian Gulf when they were approached by these Iranian patrol vessels. Now, we should know that these are not part of the Iranian Navy. This is the IRGC's Navy. There are 2 parallel military in Iran. This is the Iran Revolutionary Guards military, which is a paramilitary organization that reports directly to the leadership of Iran. And they have been responsible for the coastal defense of Iran since, I think, 2007. And they've been at the center of some of the violations, including the seizing of the UK Royal Navy personnel, American naval personnel, more recently, and have been very provocative. This is one of the more serious of the provocations, and the fact that it was done seriatim, I think it's a reflection of exactly what you said, that they feel now that they have nothing to fear in terms of response. Today, the Supreme Leader gave a briefing about their priorities, and he talked about one of them, 7 areas, of course, economics the first, because of the resistance economy is facing real challenges, as he called it. But he talked about expansion in Asia, Africa, and Latin America, things that we have talked about. He explicitly said it. And if you'll get a good laugh at this, he talks about how important culture is, and he warned against dogmatism or suppression in cultural areas, and he believes strongly in liberalism. This is an exact quote from the Ayatollah. This is him.
Did he get the right speech, Malcolm?
But he said this doesn't mean slackness. He said don't misinterpret. It doesn't mean slackness, and don't give any room for our enemy to do damage. And he said social media is progressive, and that the extremists sometimes misuse it, but it can be very positive and presents great opportunities and threats. These are the guys who crashed down and crushed the efforts to use social media. These are guys who have allowed 0 room for cultural expression, and this is the guidance that he's giving. So I think it reflects something serious we're going to talk about tonight, which people do not know, and it is hidden, is the degree to which the internal situation in Iran has deteriorated. I think some of the aggressiveness externally is also to pull attention away. And I think the biggest mistake we could make now is not to respond, is to do something dramatic against those ships. You do it once, they will stop. Not doing it sends a message to the whole Middle East. I mean, everybody watches this. We've talked about the conflict between Iran and Saudi Arabia is escalating.
There's a civil war underway, yes.
Between them. And here, now they are pressing in every venue, militarily, politically, economically, But now they're going after them to sue them over the Hajj tragedy last year when you had the people were crushed, including 400 Iranians. They've hired top international lawyers to go and sue them because they're trying to keep the pressure on them, embarrass them, demanding international control over the holy sites in Saudi Arabia. They are pressing against every one of our allies. They're being more aggressive. We learned today that in Iraq, they have 6 military camps that they have established near Kirkuk. And these are not training camps for Boy Scouts. These are 6 military camps that are being run by the Iranians in Iraq as an expression of the fact that today they have taken it over.
Is it adequate, Malcolm? We have the most recent report of the Navy firing warning shots. Is that enough?
No.
Is that, you recall, years past, a colleague of ours has told us that the Iranians believe, and have since 1980, that the Americans are incoherent and incapable during an election cycle. That was something that they believe was the reason they were successful in the hostage taking and the disruption of the American political process that many years ago. That would describe what their confidence level is now. They believe that the Americans are defenseless because we have no certainty of who will be our president in January.
And because they believe that the administration will not do anything that will escalate their military involvement at this time. And quite the opposite. I mean, we even see a representative of the administration going to speak to the NIAC conference, which is too often described as a mouthpiece of the Iranians. We see no willingness to publicly condemn in the terms that should be. Can you imagine any other country would do to American ships in international waters what they have done, and virtually no response? And it is exacerbating the situation throughout the Middle East, and it only underscores the impression that both of our weakness and of the fact that we're in collusion with them.
Just a moment now. Iran, over these last days, has been in conversation in the whole region with the Syrian civil war. It's also been in conversation with Turkey, and we may or may not have a moment to talk about this. I just want to flag it because we'll come back to it. Iran now is making an effort to accommodate itself to Turkey. Erdogan is making an effort to accommodate himself with Iran. They were enemies about 20 minutes ago. So These are all marriages of convenience. There's only one thing driving it, and that's interests. We talked about that famous picture that I kept highlighting, and now we see how significant it was and translated with Azerbaijan involved. All of them, they hate each other in every regard. They would like to destroy each other, but they have a common interest. And the fact is, because of the absence of the West, because of the weakness, and we see Russia exploiting it, and we will hear today that the story about the Air Force base is a myth, that Iran is out. Larijani not only said it, but the Russians have been working there for a year, building in that Hamadan Air Force base the infrastructure, because they're there for the long haul. They're not leaving. And all of these things, I mean, it leads to such frustration because you see how distorted the coverage is, how key issues, we're seeing it now on the Palestinian front. Look at the unrest. We see Palestinians rioting the streets, but not against Israel. It's against the PA. And we're seeing the exacerbation of all of these situations, and yet none of these are being properly reported or accounted for. We're going to move to Russia next because we have continuing confusion about whether the Russians and the Iranians have decided to base or not base air warplanes in Iran these last days. Also, Russia is claiming success in the Syrian civil war. The question is, what kind of success? How is the Assad regime viewing the current Turkish offensive against the Kurds and against the Islamic State? Malcolm Hoenlein, Conference of Presidents, Major American Jewish Organizations. I'm John Batchelor.